Welcome to another episode of Waku Waku Podcast. Today's guest is Richard Zimmerman, the founder and executive director of Orangutan Outreach. Richard founded the organization in 2007 after witnessing the devastating impact of deforestation on orangutans and their rainforest habitat in Indonesia. Today, we'll talk about why orangutans are among the world's most endangered great apes, what Orangutan Outreach is doing to protect them, and how every one of us can make a real difference. Richard, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Pleasure to be here.
For people who have never heard of the organization, what is Orangutan Outreach and what is the mission?
Well, Orangutan Outreach is a 19-year-old charity that I created in the United States, and our mission is really to provide outreach for orangutans, to make sure that every individual in need is cared for, or if they're rescued or whatnot. And we want to make sure that every orangutan is taken care of, and we want to protect their habitat in Indonesia.
What inspired you personally to dedicate your career to orangutan conservation?
I was always obsessed and in love with orangutans as a child, and I didn't pursue biology academically. I went in a different direction of international policy, but through every stage of my life, I was always still in love with orangutans. And as I got older, I saw what was happening with their with the habitat, with the forests in Borneo and Sumatra. And when in my 30s, when I realized, oh my God, they are critically endangered, and what that really means, not just the words critically endangered, but what it means to disappear from the earth. And I couldn't accept that. So I wanted to do something for these creatures who I love so much. And that was really the impetus to create the organization.
Cool. Can you tell us about your role at Orangutan Outreach?
Well, I started it, so I used to do pretty much everything. But what we've done, and it's become a we, there are now 3 of us at the organization. We liaise with our partners in the field in Borneo and Sumatra. And just to be clear, that it's the partners with indigenous people and local villages who really are doing the field work with the blessing of the Indonesian authorities, of course. But what I do is I've established a 20-year track record of supporters and folks, mainly in the U.S., but also in Canada. We love Canada, of course, and throughout the world, really, people who love orangutans and want to help. And we've been able to provide a platform for people to be able to do that. And again, working with lots of partners and lots of collaborators and other people who love orangutans.
How did Orangutan Outreach begin, and what problem was it originally created to solve?
It began in 2007, so almost 20 years ago. And it was originally created because what was happening in the early part of the century was the habitat was being just destroyed at a level of, just hundreds of thousands of acres of forests were being cut down and converted to oil palm. For palm oil, basically. So on top of all the usual problems of people's desire for hardwood timber and the exotic animal trade and whatnot, but it was really the devastation of the land. And what I first saw on a trip to Indonesia in 2006 was the result of that, which was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of orphaned orangutans of every size imaginable, babies to infants to big cheek pattern males, stuck in rescue centers, alive, thankfully, but still with no home. Basically, hundreds of orangutans having to be cared for in care centers with no future. And I felt the need to do something to help them, and to help some of these amazing people in Indonesia who were trying to help them and protect them. And I originally started helping other organizations that were already in existence. But at the time, I was working in New York at UNICEF, and the big buzzword was outreach for children here or there, everywhere. This was especially after the tsunami that devastated South and Southeast Asia. And what I realized was the orangutans needed outreach. And I thought it was just such I'm a sucker for alliteration. It just sounded good. And the orangutans, with their long arms, they reach out, and we're reaching out, and they're reaching out. So everybody was reaching out. And I'm like, all right, let's create orangutan outreach. And I literally just started it on a third computer at work as a way to just help, because I felt like I needed to do something, and I wasn't the rich guy, so I couldn't just give tons of money. So I wanted to do something that I felt compelled to do something, is really the message here.
Great. And what has changed the most since the organization was founded in 2007?
A lot has changed. We're in a whole different world, politically, socially, financially. One of the biggest changes for our organization has been the shift into social media, and what that has become, for better or for worse, and how people find out about things, how people are informed. When I started, it was really working with the Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation, who's our biggest partner. And there was a television series called Orangutan Island. And it was on Animal Planet, which I don't even know if it exists anymore as a channel. But that allowed a visibility for the issue of orangutans and orangutan conservation, and it spoke to a wide audience of this is a problem that is happening. So in conjunction with that, I was able to get Orangutan Outreach off the ground as an organization, and that sort of media presence was huge. Things have changed in the current world because of just how media is distributed and where people are and what people watch and who watches and things like that. Other things that have changed are the actual just environmental awareness, which is up and down depending on who you're talking to. But in the beginning, the destruction of the forests was just catastrophic, and it seemed like it might just the entire forest might be destroyed. And we're talking about huge land areas. It did slow down. It got better. It's coming back up in a bad way, but it did slow down mainly in the pandemic period. So that was a big change. And then I think there's just other changes in social awareness and what people know and who wants to help and just knowing. It's another world now. I used to be a youngish guy. Now I'm old. And there's a whole nother generation of young people coming on who are tech savvy, financially more savvy. And some people, thankfully, really want to see improvement in the world. And it was 20 years ago, it was sometimes it felt like we were screaming into a void, and there was just less awareness. So a lot of that has changed too.
Okay. And is there a milestone you are particularly proud of?
Yeah, a few. There's some obvious ones, like financially. We raised about $10 million over all these years. So that's a significant it helped, obviously. That's a good amount of money. So that's big, because being one little person at home, trying to figure out how to make a difference, and then all of these years later, that's huge. But on a different level, some of the orangutans who were rescued as infants, say 15 years ago, or as 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds, whatever, who went through a long period of rehabilitation and then have been released back into the wild, into safe areas of remote national park forests where they're monitored, to be clear. But to know that some of these orangutans who were rescued as infants and rehabilitated by humans and released back into the wild have had babies. So we've proven that, and the babies are thriving. So we've it's sort of a proof of concept that the biology and nature will kick in, and that a rehabilitated orangutan, while not the same as a purely wild orangutan, can go back into the wild and have a baby, and that baby is wild, and it's proof that there is hope in what we're doing. It isn't just a bottleneck of hundreds of orangutans sitting in cages waiting for whatever. So that's a milestone as well. No, getting the first footage of babies born to rehabilitated orangutans, knowing the whole origin. That's the benefit of having done this long enough to see patterns of behavior.
That's a great job, and thank you for that. Rich, why orangutans? You could choose any endangered animal. Why orangutans? What's so different about them compared to other endangered species? Actually,
they chose me, I guess. I don't know. It's the kind of thing where even when I was very young, a child with red hair, not white hair, and hair, I loved them. The first moment I saw them, they were these spectacular beings. They were this version of us, And again, this was in a situation a long time ago, and media where they were probably abused, and you wouldn't want that to happen anymore. They were in zoo scenarios, but seeing these amazing creatures and somehow connecting to them, I guess I was a weird kid, I was a strange kid, but I just connected with them. And the first time I looked them in the eyes and I connected, I felt something, and it's almost wordless. It's speechless. It's just, you see them, and then when I see them, it's just a wave comes over me. I love them and want to help them. It's unconditional. Big ones, little ones, all of them. I see them and I want to help. It's inexplicable.
Let's talk about the challenges you are going through. What are the biggest threats orangutans face today? You talk about deforestation. What are the difference and even deforestation? Let's talk about that.
Really, it all does come down to deforestation, habitat loss. The orangutans live in the forest. If there's no forest, there's no orangutan. They aren't going to come move into our cities. It's their home. The deforestation can be divided into different categories of why there's deforestation. It's the problem a little family living out in a remote area of Borneo, cutting down an acre. That's not the issue. The issue is industrial deforestation at a scale that is just immense. And again, I'm talking to you from New York. I'm in upstate New York that's full of forests, but I'm from New York City. And again, who are we to talk about deforestation? We in the West have destroyed massive amounts of habitat. It's not a secret. But basically, the deforestation is going on at a rate that's unsustainable. And the land is converted often to oil palm plantation. Now it's often for gold mines, zinc mines, copper mines, coal mines, anything that can be extracted, or the timber itself, of course, the wild animals for the exotic pet trade, for medicinal purposes that aren't really medicine, in my opinion. It's not so much a bushmeat issue with orangutans as it is in Africa with the African apes. Different situation, but it's really the forest loss, and it's being done, just to repeat myself, at a rate that's insane. Much of it illegal, but much of it legal, and it's just tragic, because you can look from satellites now. You can watch almost in real time. But if you look at images of land from month to month, you see things that the forest is gone. And that's exactly what I had seen for the first time 20 years ago while traveling in Sumatra and Borneo. Very naive, very, very, very Western. Oh, here I am in the exotic world, expecting to see forests. And what we saw was rows of oil palm trees as far as the horizon, and it's catastrophic. It's development in a sense, but much of it has been done in a way that is just awful. And that's really the crux of it, is like, how do we stop that deforestation, or stop some of it at least? But that's really the issue. Poaching, of course, but the poaching really comes from the deforestation. As the land is destroyed, all the animals. And again, I love orangutans. I'm obsessed, but I love all animals. And yes, every creature. And like you asked before, my heart breaks for every animal, and not just the orangutans, but every creature imaginable. Even animals I'm not fond of. But I've learned to feel compassion and empathy for a python. Is this an animal that I would want to hold? No. Be near? No. They scare me. I admit it. But just to know that this creature lives its life, it's just living its life, and it's all of a sudden its habitat is gone. And this is happening all over the world, of course. But in Borneo and Sumatra, which is where the orangutans are, that's our biggest concern. But also in Papua, a neighboring island, another massive island in Indonesia, the rate of deforestation is just mind-blowing. So that's really the root cause. And just another issue that crops up from that is that orangutans are territorial. They have a habitat. They have a territory that's their home range. Yeah. They're matriarchal, so the females control the land with their daughters and sisters and whatnot, and the males. When the males grow up, they spread out and they travel around, and you'll have dominant big males with the cheeks who are the kings of certain areas. But they're matrilineal. They're matriarchs, and if a habitat is destroyed, what does the orangutan do? They don't know. They only know what they know. It's philosophical. It's existential. It's like they go back to what they know. And if the forest is gone, like what do? They're hungry. They'll have encounters with whatever is there. Yeah. It's replaced the forest, which is more often than not a plantation or a human settlement. A village has expanded, and families have created smaller fruit plantations, and the orangutan will eat. And then those orangutans are viewed as pests, and it's called human-orangutan conflict. Yeah. And human always wins. That's the rule is the orangutan is not going to win.
Are they often the examples that they are killing the mother and taking the small baby as illegal trade and selling to the rich people to have their own monkey? Is still often to see that?
Yes, it's less often. That was a clear case in the past. Social media changed that. It becomes a lot different when people can take a picture on their phone and send it out. That's an interesting dynamic that in the last 20 years it has changed. Yes, the adults are always killed because an adult is, especially a male, can be aggressive. But so can a female. If she's going to protect her baby, no different than a human mother would protect a baby or any creature. It's just instinct. And the mother is often killed. The baby is, if possible, taken. And it's not so much they become local. I mean, they do become local pets sometimes. It still does happen. Less so because the teams are out there and they've established relationships, and they get the phone call saying, "Come get the baby. We don't know how the baby got here, but come get the baby." What's happened? It's really nefarious because you'll have the same mafia criminal networks who trade and sell weapons, narcotics, humans for sex slavery or labor. The same networks often trade exotic species. That's just another revenue stream. And the difference is while it's illegal, it's often or usually not prosecuted. So while it's one thing to get caught selling methamphetamine, the government's going to do everything it asks to stop that. If you're selling tigers, it's less of an issue. I mean, it's illegal, exotic. There are great laws that are more and more enforced, but it's still a problem. And again, it's a challenge because for indigenous people who are just entering a moneyed economy, $50 for a baby orangutan is a lot of money. A lot of money. I mean, that's for someone who makes $200 or $300 a month, that's a huge amount of money. And the not just orangutans, but all any animal that there's a desire for somewhere else, whether for food or for pets or parts, whatever, they're sold into networks of smuggling networks. There's great organizations that follow this and track it and try to stop it. But that same orangutan who was poached in Sumatra for $50 could sell for $50,000 in Kuwait or in Dubai, where social media has produced a downside of the desire to live this fabulous life of gorgeous beauty and with your exotic animals driving around in your golf cart with your orangutan. It's mind-boggling, and that's a tough thing to stop because it's money and yeah.
But there are also the happy cases. So can you walk us through what happens when an orangutan is rescued? That call that, hey, there is a baby. So I think that there is some happy end with those animals.
Oh yeah, there's a lot has improved for sure. We're no longer in the days of absolute no hope. 20 years ago, it was pretty close to no hope. Now, one of the biggest issues is those orangutans who either were rescued a long time ago and have been in cages and can't go back into the wild, or orangutans who carry human pathogens. What happens to them? What happens to these older orangutans who can't go back into the wild? That's really one of the major focuses for Orangutan Outreach and all of our partners now, is providing long-term sanctuary care for hundreds of orangutans. And these are adults who we don't want in a cage, because the worst thing for me is an animal in a cage. That's the worst. You don't save an animal to keep it in a cage. Doesn't make sense. Logically, it doesn't make sense. So we're working now with all of our partners in various scenarios to come up with outcomes where these orangutans can live on islands, or can live on whether small man-made islands or larger forested islands for the duration of their life without cages. And the orangutans can live into their 50s and 60s. So it's a very long-term plan. So our future hopefully involves fewer babies and long-term care for all of these orangutans who just for no fault of their own got stuck in a situation where there's nowhere for them to go. There's no habitat. They wouldn't know how to live in a tree any more than you or me. And that's one of our biggest focuses now. We call it retirement. We want them to be able to retire and live in dignity without cages because of our partners. And again, it's the partners in different parts of Kalimantan, which is Indonesian Borneo, or Sumatra. There's networks and relationships with local people, whether deep villages in the interior or just towns or anywhere, where you can get the call and then the vets will go out with the Indonesian government and confiscate the babies. Or there's a call that, we saw an orangutan in a tree, we're going to cut the tree down, or we're just afraid. So you get the calls and you have teams that'll go out, special rescue teams. And it varies depending on the organization, of course, and the terrain and where and all the details. If it's a baby, actually, let's start the other way. If it's a grown orangutan, an adult or juvenile, not a baby, that orangutan who's still wild can be caught and relocated, or translocated is the word that people use now, to a safer area of forest, miles away from where that incident occurred. And you hope the orangutan stays in the safe area, and then the end. Sometimes the orangutan will come back, you get the call again, and the same thing will happen. But normally you get them far enough away that it's just, you're buying time. That it's controversial because that orangutan only knows their territory. They don't. It's like rescuing you in Prague and putting you in Berlin. You'll figure your way out maybe, but maybe putting you in somewhere else, Mexico City, somewhere really different, far away. So there's issues of how that orangutan is going to cope and survive. And if there's other wild orangutans, you're disrupting existing social structures. If there's a big male there, he's in charge, So there's all these issues. But again, the alternative is death. So it's like, if you don't move them, they're going to die. So our philosophy is Orangutan Outreach, and me personally, is you rescue that individual and better a challenging life than no life, as far as I'm concerned. Because it would be death. There's no question. They're not going to, all join hands and get along suddenly. No, the orangutan wants the food in the village, and the villagers don't want to give up the food to the orangutan. It's simple. It's their food. If it's an infant, which more or less means a dead mother, because the mother doesn't hand off over the end. If there's ever an individual case, it is rare, and it's a statistical error. The orangutan mother does not give up the baby. So you have this infant sitting in a village, probably meant to go into the international trade, but was caught early enough. The teams will rescue the baby with the Indonesian government, and they'll bring that baby to one of a number of rescue centers and care facilities, depending on where geographically. They'll bring the baby in. The baby will get tested. Part of the rescue team, there's a veterinarian who goes to make sure the baby's healthy, not dead. You never know. You'll bring the baby to the center. Baby will go through a quarantine period, get checked out. If there's health issues, they'll be dealt with to the best abilities that the vets can handle. Sometimes it doesn't end well. More often than not, the orangutans are strong, and they'll enter the system, so to speak. If they're infants, they'll go into the infant school. If they're a little older, they'll go in forest school, but they'll be slowly acclimated after quarantine into the existing population of orangutans, more or less their age or size. And you check dental records really to see how old they are, because they may be so malnourished that they're little, but they're actually older. And then they go through a growth spurt suddenly. All sorts of little details like that. But basically, they'll enter forest school. One of our partners actually now has a project where they pair the new infants with older females who are also at the care center. And some of those relationships do work. It's pretty amazing.
So some kind of adoption program, right?
Yeah, it's an adoption. It's literally a surrogate mother of an orangutan mother, because the orangutans have the instinct. They see the babies and they know. And it's fascinating. And as long as it works, great. But often that's not possible because the numbers aren't right, or there's too many babies and not enough mothers. And they'll go through a period of forest school, we call it, or jungle school. And it's basically school. It's training. The orangutans they learn skills like nest building, how to climb trees, how to sit in trees, how to swing between the trees, the brachiation, we call it, how to get along socially with others. Dominance hierarchies begin, who the strongest are, and who the smartest are, and who the savviest are. They're still under human care when they're in rehabilitation, but with time, they go from different grades. There's school 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and biology kicks in. The instincts do kick in. Especially as they approach puberty, they become animals again. They're not so much human cared for. They're still cared for, but they start to become more individuals. We think of it as junior high school in American English. They're starting to really explore the world more. And then once they've developed a certain skill set, and it's all monitored by their caregivers, and there's copious notes taken.
And how long it takes normally, or what was the range? How long it takes?
Depends, 7 to 10 years maybe. Depends how little they are when they start, and how quickly they develop the skills, and just what's happening, and if there's fewer of them, and again, they're also individuals, and some are more needy than others, but they reach a point. It's amazing where all of a sudden they're wild. They're getting wild. And so they move from the classroom onto islands. And those are called pre-release islands. And that I mentioned when we started talking, a show called Orangutan Island. And that was basically a series filming them on these islands. Basically, these are generally speaking river islands, so they're safe and they're monitored by rescue centers. And those orangutans live in the forest. They get supplemental feeding just to make sure, and there's technicians that monitor them and make sure everyone's getting along. There's not too many fights. They do fight, and they're watched to see how they're rewilding, how they are developing. And
so that's like last final test.
It's basically a college, it's a university. And once they pass their final exams, at that point they're stronger, they're bigger, they're older. They're scheduled for release, and so depending on the partner, you have massive release operations. Depending on the destination, different national parks, there's these long journeys to get to these remote areas over rivers, sometimes involving helicopters. Those are the best ones because they're so far away that people can't really get there to cause harm. But so they're scheduled for release. They get released. They get chips in them, so they're monitored. And they often go out in groups. So these are orangutans that have all known each other since they're little because they've all been in school all these years. But the habitat has been monitored beforehand to see what's going on, to make sure that it's orangutan safe, that there aren't too many problems, that there's enough food season to season. This is basically ancient orangutan habitat that is minimally occupied at this point. Although now it's been going on, the release programs have been going on long enough that you have new populations forming. So the goal is to get genetically viable populations of 300 orangutans that can be stable. And that, when I mentioned earlier, when you start to see these rehabilitated orangutans get released and have babies, these are the genetics contributing to these new populations. And another great thing about it is the partners have relationships with these indigenous villages of Dayak people. And so those people are become stakeholders in the project. So they're hired to track the orangutans, to monitor the situation, to report back on the quality of the forest, the quality of the behavior, and what's happening. And basically, they become protectors of the forests and the orangutans, and consequently, every creature who's benefiting, instead of someone who's causing harm. Because again, without the indigenous people, without the local people, none of this is happening. It's up to them.
That was my another question. How important is working with local communities there? So there is the part of the answer, and is there some kind of like ecotourism, etc. there?
There's some areas that's something that's being considered, of course. The most famous example that I'm aware of is actually with the mountain gorillas in Africa. You have, I have people I know have gone. I've never gone, but there are some attempts at that. But it's more an attempt of when we bring them into the project, you're also bringing medical help. You're bringing education. Conservation education is huge, especially for the people who are so remote and so far away from Java, from Jakarta. It's almost another world. And they can benefit so much from these sorts of things. Not just the income, of course, but just the starting to be included in the larger social economy. But yeah, without their buy-in, it's not happening. It's always up to the local people. We used to say, oh, well, here I am in New York. It's so abstract. It's so far away, but it's also abstract for people in Indonesia who are in Jakarta. Many people are so unfamiliar with what's going on in the interior of Borneo. It's like it is another world for them as well. And we've started to see just amazing things in the last 10 years with technology, especially. So you'll have these indigenous areas where they're all on with Wi-Fi and on cell phones, and so everyone's sort of it's inclusive. Everything is meant to be inclusive. It's really the way we should put it.
Great. Let's talk about stories from the field, Rich. Is there some rescue story that has stayed with you forever, or some case from last weeks or months you can talk about?
Um, to contextualize it, there was a brief point where I was more hands-on 15 years ago, where I was actually going there and I was more involved. You quickly realize that my best use is not there; it's here. So it's raising funds for those projects so those folks can do the work, and it's amazing work, and they're amazing. But in the beginning, when I was involved, just the first rescue missions, going and rescuing an orangutan and cutting a chain that their neck had grown into because they were confiscated as a baby. They were poached as a baby, and they grew into the neck. The chain. Just seeing that, being in that presence, and cutting the chain. That is something I can't ever forget. That is just because it goes from an idea of someone who loves orangutans so much, but is so far away. I mean, it might as well be Mars. It might as well be another planet. It's so far away, just conceptually and travel time. It's another world. But to actually experience that, it's profound. Just like, wow. And just the knowing that I've been able to make a difference, and when I'm there and I see them, do I know if they know that I made a difference? I don't know. but it's very satisfying to know that, okay, I had an idea and I was able to implement it, and it's the effects are in front of me. These orangutans are alive. These orangutans are about to be released back into the wild, and I played a role, whatever tiny role I was able to play. And again, I don't want to take any credit from folks on the ground who feed them, who care for them, who do clean up the poop, and deal with the government and deal with the police and deal with the villages. Again, props to everybody. I have my little role, and that is very satisfying, knowing that I was able to do something. Because again, deep down, I'm still that little kid that loves orangutans, that sees an orangutan melts. It's like I've devoted my life to them. And here we are. It's like, so we know that there's babies out there being born that we played a role somehow, and that's satisfying, I have to say.
Okay, now we have year 2026. What's the population of orangutans, and what are the predictions?
The exact numbers vary, of course. Let's back up a second here. There's technically three types of orangutans. Bornean on the island of Borneo, which is Kalimantan is the Indonesian part, and Borneo is the Malaysian part. But that's where most of the orangutans are. And I don't know exact numbers, honestly. No, I don't think anybody knows. 40,000, 50,000, somewhere. The important thing is it's going down. And we're trying to push back and get some new populations, but in general, it's going down. And those populations are spread into different provinces, political provinces, but also geographic ranges, and they're different subspecies. Could they interbreed? Yes. But they've been isolated for so long that they're considered separate types of orangutans. And hence our partnerships are with organizations in different areas of Borneo, of Kalimantan, to cover different populations in need. I mean, they're all in need, but some are critically in need. They're all, it's a scary thing. But then we have Sumatra, where you have the Sumatran orangutans that are genetically different. They look different. If you look enough, you see a clear difference. They're much more endangered, only in the sense that there's fewer of them and there's fewer populations. I think the range is maybe 6,000 to 12,000. Again, it varies, and nobody has an accurate number. But again, the problem is it's going down. The biggest problem right now is the third type. That's called a Tapanuli orangutan. And they're in one small area of forest in Sumatra they're very special because they're in Sumatra, but they carry genetic similarities to the ones in Borneo. So they're a remnant population from before the water rose.
Yeah.
Because originally Indonesia is, thousands and thousands of islands. It's a wide country, about as wide as the United States, but it's islands, different cultures, different people, different language. It's insane. I mean, you read books about Indonesia and you're like, oh my God, how does this even exist? But it was once part of all one landmass connected to the Asian Peninsula. And the Tapanuli orangutans are a remaining population on a high ground mountain area that is what remained after the waters came up thousands of years ago. So they're fascinating. And they're critically endangered. There's only a few hundred left. Don't quote me on the exact number, maybe 600 or so. But and there was a catastrophic flooding last year at the end of 2025 when basically a storm hit the area where they are. And there had already been so much devastation of forest for hydropower projects and gold mining that the trees that would normally keep the land sturdy weren't there. And the whole thing just rushed down. And 20% of them were killed, of these Tapanuli orangutans, who were already critically endangered to the point of they may be the first ones to go extinct in our lifetime. That was devastating. So you have these three types of orangutans. The population is going down. We don't know the exact numbers, but like I said, we're working with our partners to create and recreate and rewild orangutans in areas that hopefully can be protected. We don't know, because again, it's humans in charge. The orangutans aren't in charge. And it's just a matter of whether human consciousness, I guess, gets to a point where we stop destroying the habitats. But it's not my decision. I'm sitting here trying to help the individual orangutans, but we're fighting back the way we can. But there's still massive amounts of land being lost, and with every tick of the economy and fuel and gasoline and petrol and coal and green energy and new energy, everything changes, and there's more of a push to just extract, especially the coal right now, which is counterintuitive to anyone who's conservation minded. But we're not the ones making those decisions. And it's just devastating, because it's happening, you're watching it happening. We have special teams that we fund to go into these areas where the coal mines are destroying the habitat, and they'll get all the orangutans they can out. And it's literally like rescue missions. We used to joke and call it the Borneo airlift. It's like airlifting people out, airlifting the orangutans out, except by car. And it's challenging. It's very depressing, but at the same time, there's a will, and there's a new generation of Indonesian conservationists trying to stop it before it's too late. And we're thrilled and honored to support these people. It's like it's their future. It's their land. All you can do is help them as best you can.
Reaching the target to save orangutans, if you could change one thing in the world tomorrow that would have the biggest impact on orangutan conservation, what would it be?
Habitat.
One thing. Habitat.
You have to protect the forest that remains, and that's and the orangutans who are there. And if there aren't orangutans there, that's where we're putting the rehabilitated orangutans. That habitat is the key, because if there's no forest, there's no orangutan.
So stop cutting the trees. That simple as is.
Yeah, it sounds so simple,
but it's not.
That would be the one thing. And then if I could say another thing, vegetarianism. People just stop eating meat, stop killing animals, raise the consciousness. We're killing every animal. I mean, it's insane. I mean, again, we're Orangutan Outreach. We have our focus, but it's every living being. It's elephants, it's tigers, it's cheetahs, it's giraffes, it's zebras. It's every living creature, and there just doesn't seem to be a consciousness to stop it. It's insane. I personally, I can't comprehend it. It's like, wow, what are we doing? Look, just stop and look around. What are we doing here?
Yeah. So many listeners may think they can't make a difference. So except not eating a meat, would you say to them how they can help you and orangutans?
Well, donations, obviously. That's goes without saying. Raising awareness is huge among everyone. School children, again, the kids it's their planet. We're just still here. Raising awareness among each other, among their parents, or just people in general, just learning about these issues. Again, environmental issues shouldn't be controversial, but they certainly are, especially here in the US, where policy is going the opposite direction of what we think it should be, we being conservationists. But again, these are big issues. But people just need to be aware of what's happening. Look at the fires everywhere. The earth is on fire. What humans are doing to the climate is, people can deny it if they want, but at the end, when it's all burned down, it's all burned down. And extinction is forever. These forests are burned forever. We can regrow them, and we have teams that have great reforestation projects, but it takes time, and things are moving fast. That is one of the biggest problems, is that are we running out of time? But people just need to be aware. They need to spread the word within the context of their own lives, our coworkers, colleagues, friends, relatives. It's just raise consciousness, raise awareness is really what it's going to come down to. And again, I say this as someone who is not perfect. I'm a very imperfect human being. But I got to a point where I decided this is what I'm going to devote my life to. I want to do this for these creatures. A lot of people wonder, what can I do to help? I don't know, find something bigger than yourself and work to make it better. work to improve the lives of some animal, someone. It doesn't even have to be orangutans. We love elephants. we love deer. We love all creatures, great and small, and humans. Just try to do something good. It's again, it sounds easy, but it's not.
Well, my final question is, what's the one message you hope every listener remembers after this conversation? So I think that this last answer can define that. Find something bigger than you and try to help.
Yeah, it's that. It's we only have one planet. We're not going to Mars. Sorry, Elon. We this is not happening. At least not in the foreseeable future. And we need to protect what we have here. It's precious. Life is precious. The forests are precious. The oceans are precious. The deserts are precious. The mountains, the seas, everything is precious, and we're killing it. We're destroying it. We just need to wake up and do something to reverse the destruction and try to protect what we still have before it's too late.
But thanks to you and other projects, there is still hope. So, Richard, thank you so much for sharing your story and for all the incredible work you and the Orangutan Outreach team and your partners are doing to protect orangutans and their rainforest home. Richard, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If today's conversations inspired you, we'd love to invite you to support Orangutan Outreach through the Waku Waku donation platform. You can contribute starting from $1, and 100% of your donations goes directly to protecting orangutans and supporting conservation projects. Every contribution, no matter the size, helps create a better future for all these incredible animals. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you on the next episode of Waku Waku Podcast.